Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II here. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Church of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarCross Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 211. We're covering Apostolicum Exercitatum 8 on charity in the apostolate. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we spoke about how the temple order is vast, it is corrupted by original sin, and lay people are called to renew it. Today we are going to conclude chapter 2 on the objectives, talking about charitable works, as they are important apostles the church has always recognized and which are now becoming more globalized. And I think even since Vatican II, even more globalized, because today, I'll mention it when I get there. Or I'll mention it now. I got a Facebook ad for a Catholic charity doing work in South Sudan about a famine there to donate to it. And that's something which shows this kind of globalization. I'll just mention it now. We'll get to it later on. So paragraph 8 here has 6 subparagraphs. We're going to cover A and B together, but they have different meanings here. So A, charity has a motive and the type of apostolate. B, charity is Jesus' great commandment. C, the church has always recognized charity. D, charity is becoming more globalized. E and F will read together, but E, the need to see others' image of God, and F, laity need to donate to such charities. It is your duty and responsibility. So let's start reading with A and B. A, while every exercise of the apostles should be motivated by charity, some works by their very nature can become especially vivid expressions of this charity. Christ the Lord wanted these works to be signs of his messianic kingdom. Confer Matthew 11. This great commandment of the law is to love God with one's whole heart and one's neighbor as oneself. Confer Matthew 22. Christ made the commandment of love of neighbor his own and enriched it with new meaning. For he wanted to equate himself with his brethren as the object of this love when he said, as long as you did it to one of these, the least of my brethren, you did it to me. Matthew 25. Assuming human nature, he bound the whole human race to himself as a family through the certain supernatural solidarity and established charity as the mark of his disciples, saying, by this all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. So these 2 subparagraphs obviously point out our theme for this podcast episode today. It's charity, not so much a virtue, but actual apostolates of charity. So it is the motive for all the apostolates, but we have specific apostolates that are more, we consider works of charity. Your soup kitchen downtown is a work of charity. Your Catholic school that has 99% or 90% paying students is not a work of charity in the same way as a soup kitchen and things like that. And that's an important aspect to understand. Now, both those are good works. We need this Catholic school, even the ones that people pay for and things like that. It's great. But it's a different thing from a work of charity. Jesus wants us to have charity motivating all of it, but he also wants these specific the specific works of charity. And Jesus gives us this as a great commandment. First, we have when he talks about the 2 greatest commandments, love God and love the neighbor. And then he talks about what we do to others, we do to him, right? We do for the least of these. And then by love, we'll know him. And what kind of love does Jesus have? Jesus has the love taken to the cross. No greater love has a man than to lay down his life for his friends. That is the love that Jesus had for us. So moving on to subparagraph C, 8C, the church has always recognized charity. So let's read it. C. In her very early days, the Holy Church added the agape to the Eucharistic prayer, and thus showed itself to be wholly united around Christ by the bond of charity. So too in every era, it is recognized by the sign of love, and while it rejoices in the undertakings of others, it claims works of charity as its own inalienable duty and right. For this reason, pity for the needy and the sick, and works of charity and mutual aid intended to relieve human needs of every kind are held in highest honor by the Church. So this first thing they talk about is the agape with the Eucharistic prayer, with the prayer of the church. So in the early church, there was a tradition of having an agape, Greek word for charity, which was a meal, kind of a common meal after the Mass. It was kind of like coffee donuts, but I think a lot more substantial because it would have been a very substantial meal. And it would be something that would be great to bring back. I think it would be great to have a big meal after Mass, help families get together, know each other, help that charity so that even people who are not doing so well financially, they can have that one big meal on Sunday and things like that. And we also need to have charity at different times. Now, the times and places are going to affect it a lot. We have charity as it worked in a medieval village, and that's probably not going to work in the 21st century just because our society is structured so differently and the types of aid you need are so different. Now, in that, we also need to think of how we can do it today. And one of the ways we can do it today is what we're going to talk about in paragraph 8D, which is charity is becoming more globalized. D, at the present time, with the development of a more rapid facilities for communication, with the barrier of distance separating men greatly reduced, with the inhabitants of the entire globe becoming one great family, these charitable activities and works have become more urgent and universal. These charitable enterprises can and should reach out to all persons and all needs. Whether there are people in need of food and drink, clothing, housing, medicine, employment, education, whether men lack the facilities necessary for living a truly human life, or are afflicted with serious distress or illness, or suffer exile and imprisonment, their Christian charity should seek them out and find them, console them with great solicitude, and help them with appropriate relief. This obligation is imposed above all upon every prosperous nation and person. Today, the world is more interconnected, even more than it was at the time of Vatican II. We look at today, and just like I was mentioning at the beginning, that idea of a Facebook ad for a charity that needs help with some kind of thing on the other side of the world, that's a reality. I'm sure some of you have run across different ones asking for famines or for help with a Catholic school or things like that in other parts of the world. It's great to donate to them. And this interconnection should lead to wider charity. We don't just have the people we can see in our own local town. We have all these people around, and we can donate both nationally to certain charities that work in certain areas of the country, they're poor, or internationally to things that work in more poor areas of the world. And we need to help. We need, as Christians, to help these people out. We need to look for ways to help them out. One of the things that's also important that I think a lot of people miss today, or maybe not a lot, but some, is that this responsibility is of the nation, not just the individuals, right? It says this obligation is imposed upon above all upon every prosperous nation and person. So it's imposed upon nations, not just persons. So there is an obligation of nations to help out the poor. Some want to make it just individuals. So there's no collective responsibility, but there is a collective responsibility of the nation. And so it's right to use money from taxes and things to help poor people in other parts of the world. That is pretty explicitly endorsed here. So now we're going to move on to the last two subparagraphs, E and F, which we'll read together. E is about the need to see others in the image and likeness of God, and F is about laity need to donate to these charities. We priests can donate a bit, but we honestly don't have a ton of money because we live on poverty wages and things like that. So I know for myself, when I have a little bit extra money, I donate it mainly to our own seminary, for our own community, or to the Catholic World Mission, which helps out especially schools in other parts of the world. For the poor, obviously, schools for the poor. So let's read it. E, in order that the exercise of charity on this scale may be unexceptional in appearance as well as in fact, it is altogether necessary that one should consider in one's neighbor the image of God in which he has been created, and also Christ the Lord, to whom is really offended whatever is given to a needy person. It is imperative also that the freedom and dignity of the person being helped be respected with utmost consideration, that the purity of one's charitable intentions not be stained by seeking one's own advantage or striving for domination, and especially that demands of justice be satisfied, lest the giving of what is due in justice be repressed by the offering of represented as the offering of a charitable gift. Not only the effects, but also the causes of these ills must be removed, and the help given in such a way that the recipients may gradually be freed from the dependence on outsiders and become self-sufficient. F. Therefore, the laity should hold in high esteem and, according to their ability, aid the works and projects for social assistance, whether public or private, including international programs whereby effective help is given to needy individuals and peoples. In doing so, they should cooperate with all men of goodwill. So we start off these two subparagraphs with this idea of vision of what we see. We see, first of all, an image and likeness of God. Second of all, we see Christ in the poor and the needy. Those are two fundamental realities of what we see. They are spiritual motivation. Then it talks about how we need to respect individuals. We don't just do charity to try and build ourselves up. Sometimes you'll see where the charity seems to be more about the celebrity looking good than about actually helping people. That's a problem. That is a real problem. And it also notes that a lot of what we call charity is actually justice, because if the people around you can't have enough for food, clothing, shelter, what is yours legally is actually those poor people's morally. That's very much part of church teaching. Now, exactly what that is, and it's obviously not to say that you have to go down to an absolute destitution. For example, I have a laptop here. I have, some very basic things like that, right? And then we must do the causes, not just the results. And so this is where I think, like for us as the Legion, we looked at what our skills are. We said, hey, we can do the most by building schools to help the poor rather than by running charities ourselves. Finally, this section talks about the idea of laity needing to donate to help charities, both the national and international, local and international, and also working with men and women of goodwill, not just with specifically Catholic charities, which is important because sometimes we can think, oh, it's just Catholic ones. No, but also working with others when that's helpful. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarCross produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarCross Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to have the next two paragraphs of Apostolicum Exercitatem, paragraphs 9 and 10 on lay apostolate in the world. Please try to stand to learn more about Vatican II, provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlists on individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X.
Amen.